Hey, hi everybody. Were all of you just here for 101? Raise your hand if you were here for 101, the previous panel. I think most of you. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you enjoyed the panel. Coincidentally, I know two of those projects quite intimately. I've worked with both Lucien and Marshall on their projects over the years. They're some of my favorite artists and art makers and supporters of art in the Brooklyn community, so I feel like you were very lucky. I was very excited to get to know Scout a little bit and her work. I've been kind of just admiring it on the internet. So for those of you who are here, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. My name is Stephanie Pereira, and I also work here at Kickstarter. Up until recently, I was also looking after the art projects on Kickstarter, and now I am looking after helping you guys figure out how to do this and do this better. So I am presenting to you tonight mostly from the perspective of somebody who thinks a lot about creative ideas, how to make them happen, and what it really takes to engage and build an audience around those ideas. So as we've learned a little bit about, Kickstarter is a place where people come to create something to share with others. What that means is that built within every Kickstarter project is a story that you can tell to engage an audience in a creative idea. The best projects on Kickstarter go one step further. You're not just inviting people to your project, but you're also inviting people to be a part of your project and being excited about spreading the word about your project. So there's a lot of different ways you can tell your story on Kickstarter. We give you a space to upload a video, to include a project description, to have rewards, which are a powerful storytelling tool, and of course to share project updates, which are like a blog that is built into your project. These are all places you tell your story on Kickstarter. The thing that's important, though, is you need people to come to see that page in order for your story to be told. Just launching a page is not enough. So I would like for us to go on a journey together to think about how we can use email, social media, our friends in the press or media or bloggers, maybe live events, communities out there who are excited about what we are up to drive traffic, energy, and interest to our Kickstarter project pages to help us bring our ideas to life. So step one in doing that is to create a key message. So to not just say, hey, I've got this really great idea, but to truly understand what that idea is, what the story is you are telling about this thing that you're making, and what the audience that you are engaging in the story of that project is. The tricky thing is that the story you are telling is influenced by the audience you want to reach, and the audience that you want to bring to your project is influenced by the story that you're telling. So it's like this kind of tricky thing. How do I decide what my story is, what my audience is? How do I reach these people? One way you do this is by figuring out what your goals are. So when you launch a project on Kickstarter, of course, as I said, you want to create something. You want to share it with other people and build an engaged audience in that idea. But you probably want to do something else. You might want to create an incredible public artwork that inspires people to change the world. You might want to publish a book in a way that has never been published before. You might want to get someone else to publish your next book for you. You might want to get press for your project. You might want to get a new audience engaged in your project. Maybe you have that same list of 1,000 people who read all your updates and come to all your openings, but you want another 1,000 to come along. So it's a given, those first two things. For every Kickstarter project, those are the first two things you always probably should have in mind as goals, but the third, of course, is up to you. You can have more goals than that. You don't want to have too many. But this will help you figure out what your key messages are and how to tell your story. So for example, in this project, which is a public art project called The Dawn of the Anthropocene by Ligorano Reese, they wanted to make a public artwork that would be displayed during a climate march that was happening around the UN Climate Summit last year. There are a lot of possible stories that you can tell about a project like this, right? Like this is like rife with ideas. So this is a public artwork, this is a work about climate change, this is a work about the UN Climate Summit that's happening. Specifically, maybe you want to talk about the march in New York. Maybe you're just artists who are making a new creative work and you're super excited about that, and that's the story you want to tell. You probably then, this is where you would go to your goals. What are my goals? What do I want to achieve with this project? Well, I know I want to make an incredible public artwork that is going to inspire people and change the way they think about climate change. So those two maybe would be good key messages to focus on when you're telling the story of your project. And maybe you being a New York-based artist, maybe knowing that lots of people are coming to New York for this march, maybe knowing that there's going to be lots of press around this and that the press is going to be looking for hooks and stories to tell, that might be a great key message for you as well. So this is a way that you can sort of essentialize what your key messages might be. Let's look at another possible approach. So Lucien Zion founded and is now the director of a place called the Invisible Dog, which is an art center here in Brooklyn. There's a lot of different stories also with the Invisible Dog. It is a place in Boerum Hill. It's very connected to its local neighborhood. It's part of the sort of thriving, growing, energetic Brooklyn art scene that has been captured and retold in stories around the world. It is an artist residency center. Lucien's founding story is an incredible story. Lucien himself is an incredible character that people gravitate to and think of very often when they think of Invisible Dog. It's an interdisciplinary art center. It has year-round programming. There are lots of different approaches to this. So here's another way you can refine your stories and think about key messages. Instead of just picking 3 from this list, you might say, all right, well, what's coming together here? What's really standing out to me? And then turn it into a list of 3 concise, really punchy points, things that you're excited about talking about. Again, thinking with your goals in mind, what do you want to achieve? And really, what kind of audience do you want to reach with these ideas? So you might say, Invisible Dog is an interdisciplinary art center based in the Boerum Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn, and inside is all sorts of incredible creative people. All right, so now we figured it out, right? We know everything about key messages. So that's a good sort of intro to key message. Number 1, you're going to launch a Kickstarter project, know what your key messages are, determine those with your goal and your audience in mind. 2, so now you know how to find an audience. Typically when someone launches a project on Kickstarter, this is what it looks like, right? So they create and launch the project, maybe then they send an e-blast, they do some social media, then they start saying things like, fund me, I need just some more money, come on guys. Then they go into like frenzy mode because they're trying to reach their funding goal, and then they fund. And then we all cheer and we clap and celebrate and it's exciting and the thing gets made. That's fun, that is one way to do it. I'm totally cool with that. That said, this is a little scarier looking, but maybe a little more professional. It has a little more long-term engagement strategy built in. If you are doing something that is a serious project, something that's meaningful to you, if you have goals beyond raising the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, whatever it is that you're trying to raise on Kickstarter, this might be an approach you could consider. So 1, identify those key messages. 2, find out the audience that you want to speak to. Who do you want to deliver those messages to? 3, start sharing those messages. Start sharing your ideas, sharing your project. Learn from the audience response that you get. Figure out what are people into over here. Start to collect an engaged audience. You want to start building relationships. So now you've learned about these people. You're going to collect them. You're going to start building relationships with them. You're going to start posting more things, sending emails, learning about what they like. And using that information to refine those key messages, because originally those key messages came from you. But you want to make sure that your key messages are speaking to an audience and making sure that those messages are resonating with people. And you might learn from this process that your messages could be refined. So once you've done that, that's when you start to create the assets related to your Kickstarter project. That's when you start to think about your communication plan. How are you going to roll this out? Who am I going to tell about it? When am I going to tell them about it? You might then start thinking about securing early support for your project. So this might mean bringing in key partners. This might mean bringing in collaborators, people who work on your project with you. This might mean people who are going to help you with your Kickstarter project. So after that, this is actually an unofficial thing, but this is something I advise people to do. A soft launch on their Kickstarter project. So this is when your Kickstarter actually goes live, you hit the launch button, but you don't announce it yet. This is when you go to your list of your most trusted, truest fans, the people who know the project is coming, they're excited about it, they're ready, they're on board, and you tell just them. And you say, hey guys, we've launched, we're live, your early support will mean a lot, it'll help us show momentum and enthusiasm and excitement for the project. Give them a few hours, maybe sometimes longer depending on your community and the kind of people they are, to pledge and participate in your project. And once they do, that's when you do the e-blast. That's when you do the big launch. That's when you announce and you say, hey, world, check it out. And then when total strangers land on your page, they're going to see, oh my goodness, there's already like 100 people here. Oh, that's a big number, but let's say there's already 100 people here. There's already people who are excited about and care about this. Look at all these rewards. Ooh, a lot of people like this $25 reward. I want to check that one out. So you want your launch to really be launch ready. From there, you think about steady and sustained engagement. So what that means is you've launched, you have a community of people, you want to make sure that you're keeping them coming in. And you do that by sharing content and ideas and stories, and you're just regularly trotting this stuff out. Maybe you have some press stories seeded. Maybe you have an event planned. Maybe you happen to have a gallery show opening or some sort of showing of your work coming up. So these are ways that you can think about building into this steady and sustained engagement period. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff. We don't have a lot of time tonight. I'm going to dig into 3 things here that I spend the most of my time here at Kickstarter helping people understand. One is identifying that audience. How do you find those people? Who are those people? How do I get beyond my existing mailing list, my friends, my family, my Facebook fans, whatever that is? How do I use this as an opportunity to grow beyond? 2, what is this sharing, learning, collecting process? How do I try that out? How do I start to roll ideas out to the world and really get their feedback on my ideas? And 3, what are these assets you speak of? What is a communication plan when you're thinking about Kickstarter? So 1, identify audience. This is actually a pretty simple formula. This is in a lot of ways the easiest part of your Kickstarter project. This is a usually research-intensive period. This is where you're doing a lot of Googling, a lot of Google image searching, a lot of reading, blogging, maybe making Excel spreadsheets if that's your thing, maybe bookmarking if you prefer that. I like Tumblr. I use the Tumblr plugin a lot for this. So what you're going to be doing is looking for projects similar to yours, projects that maybe don't look super similar but have similar key messages to yours, or they just look exactly like yours. You're like, oh, they're like me. I want to know what they did. 2, you want to figure out what are the communities engaged in those projects? Who are the people excited about these stories that I'm telling that these people are telling? And 3, of course, people who are writing about these projects. Who are the people that are going to help me share my story, right? So let's go back to this example of this public artwork, Dawn of the Anthropocene. So it's public art. What did we say the key messages are? Public art, climate change, and, the March on NYC. So step 1, if you're doing a Kickstarter project, might be to see what other successful public art projects have there been on Kickstarter. I've done a search here, successful public art from all around the world, and I sorted by most funded, because I want to see, of course, the most successful. If I browse that list, I may come across this project, which is called Capitalism Works for Me by an artist named Steve Lambert, who also happens to live in the New York area. After his sign was funded on Kickstarter, it went on to be temporarily installed in Times Square. So this is actually a great fit when thinking about Dawn of the Anthropocene. So then I did a quick Google search. I wrote Capitalism Works for Me, Times Square, because what we want to know is who is excited about Steve's project, a public artwork in Times Square. It's also a socially engaged artwork, so it's also relevant to Nora and Marshall's project, the Ligorano Reese project. You can now see that NPR did a piece on it, which also was pushed to WNYC or vice versa. Creative Time Reports, which does a lot of public artwork and socially engaged stuff, did a piece on it. The Midtown Magazine, that's something I would never have thought of in a million years if I was writing a list, but apparently this is something they're interested in. So this is a way you can find out who is writing about who cares about these things. You can also just type in your key phrases. So I typed in NYC, public art, climate change, saw what came up. That was a lot. I might just start with climate change or public art or New York and public art and see what comes up. Interestingly enough, at this intersection, things happened. So this is a good resource, too, to see, particularly around the communities engaged, interested, and involved in these ideas. Okay, so now we've identified our audience through tons of research. Now we want to start sharing stuff with them, learning about them, and building a list and building those relationships. This is about putting content out. This might be images of your existing work in progress, if you have something to show. This is where you're going to start to find fans of the work, but also partners and allies, people who can collaborate with you on making it happen. So in that project I just showed you, the Steve Lambert one, it was eventually picked up by Crossing the Line, which is an arts festival that happens here in New York, that produced it and presented it with the Times Square Arts Alliance. So that's an example of a partner and ally that may help you with your project. You want to make sure that you're collecting these people, right? You don't just want to be pushing stuff out on the internet. You want to make sure that you're building an email list, Facebook fan subscribers, whatever it is, whatever the thing you use to communicate your work that you find people to be most engaged with. Because your audience might really love Facebook, your audience might really like email. It kind of depends on who you are and who your audience is. And then you want to learn about them. You don't want to just like assume that you know what these people care about, what they respond to. You want to test and send images, try different headlines, try different kinds of content, and see what they respond to. So I'm going to change gears a little bit away from the two examples I've shown you previously and introduce a third. And I'm showing you this one because this is by an artist named Tim Feit, an artist and musician who lives here in Brooklyn, who I happen to be friends with. So I know quite a bit about his project, the planning, and everything that went into the making of this thing. And you can see it was quite successful. In the arts category, most people are raising between $5,000 and $6,000. Tim raised over $18,000 from 365 people. So he had quite a large project. So I want to let's see how he did it, right? So one, I know he had 3 key messages. One was that he was making a new album. It was something quite special. It wasn't quite a straight-ahead music album. It was like a new media art conceptual project. But we'll just call it a new album for short. He also wanted his fans, who largely he knows as a musician. He met them while touring as a musician, got them to sign up on his sign-up list, et cetera, et cetera. He wanted them to know that he was also a fine artist, and a serious fine artist. Finally, his third key message was this was his first album that he was making on his own. So he had always had a label that he'd worked with, or a tour manager, or at least a booking agent, someone who had helped him with this stuff. This is the first time he was really doing it on his own, and he was really counting on his fans to come together and really be a part of the making of this with him. So let's take a look at what he did. Over a year before he started working on his Kickstarter project, of course, he was already working on this album. I think this was 9 months before he launched his project, he started posting images on Facebook of his work in progress. So one of the themes he was exploring for the album was people and their relationship with their cell phones. So he started posting drawings and experiments and art stuff that he was making in relation to this exploration. And he was just kind of like testing, like, Chicago Glass Collective, random picture. Some people liked it. The word phonies, that doesn't even make sense, but phonies with a drawing, 11 people liked that, okay. He also experimented with making work with his fans, because that was one of his key messages. I'm doing this on my own, and I want you guys to be a part of it. So he posted this on Facebook, which was, I'm doing this really cool project with a friend of mine. I want you guys to be a part of it. Here's the information on how. And he also engaged his friend Bonaparte, who's a musician based in Switzerland, in doing this music video with him. And they timed it to release before Tim's album came out. Part of the purpose of this was so that when the album did come out, that Bonaparte's fans would get to meet Tim. They would discover him and be excited about him, and they would hopefully become Tim's fans. That worked. Actually, if you saw on that previous slide, they got lots of coverage. This was, I think, their biggest story was in HuffPo that drove a lot of traffic to them. Got a lot of shares, likes, loves, a lot of new people on Tim's mailing list. And then, of course, Tim's fans, Bonaparte's fans, the people who were part of this video, right, that they had invited to be part of the video, they also wrote about it. They also shared it to their friends, right? So this is something you want to do. You want to make a project not just that you're sharing, but that you're creating content that other people will want to share on your behalf. Okay, so now we know our audience is, we've learned about them, we've started to build a list, we're growing, we're growing, we're growing. Now we can start to create assets and create a communications plan. So again, you want to make content that helps you achieve your goals. This is really important. What are your goals with this project? But also as stuff that's going to really resonate with your fans. You just don't want to just be pushing stuff out into the world because you think it's important. You want to make sure that it's being warmly received, passed along, and then also responded to. You want to make sure that you have a good plan, a plan that doesn't just account for, I'm going to launch this thing and see what happens. You want to make sure that you launch and that you're ready for that sustained, thoughtful follow-up I spoke about earlier. And then you also, now that you know a lot about your audience, you're ready to segment them and consider what kinds of different channels you're going to reach them through. So you might have people who are going to be deeply engaged with you on Facebook, like Tim's fans are, or they may be email people, they may be Twitter people, they may be Instagram people, Tumblr is very popular. Whoever your people are, you want to make sure that you're reaching them in the way that is meaningful to them. So this is a good thing to take a picture of, mostly because there's a lot of tiny words on the screen. This is a tool that I developed with some of my colleagues here that that we like to use when we're talking to people about this very thing. So when you are figuring out what is the content I'm making for my Kickstarter project and how do I make sure it is going to go really far and work really hard for me, this is a way you can think about doing it, or you can modify it, of course. So you could think about what is the content. Is it a video? Is it audio? Is it image? Is it Word? Is it like, what is it that I'm sharing? What is it and what is cool about it? Like, what's the hook here? What's the kind of juicy tidbit? Who is going to be excited about it, right? Like my music fans, my art fans, who are the people that are going to be most excited about this? To use the Nora and Marshall, is it the climate change people? Is it the public art people? Is it the people coming to the march in New York? And then where does this get shared? Am I making this video? What happens to it? You don't just want to make a video, you want to make sure that it goes out into the world. And then finally, when, right? Is this before you launch your project? Is this part of your audience building strategy? Is this while your project is live to help you keep momentum going and keep that engagement sustained? So the when is very important. So again, some examples for you guys. This is still using Tim's project as an example. Tim made a video to announce his project. It was something that he co-created with his fans, because that really, when he did that thing with Bonaparte, it worked very well, so he figured he would do it again. He made it for his fans and with his fans, knowing that the people in the video would be very likely to pass that video along for him, whether it was on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever they were sharing, he knew the video would be shared. And then it would be a way for him to celebrate in a fun way the launch of his project. He also made a photo that I'll show you in a second to keep people engaged in the story of his project as it progressed. And then this is sort of how he delivered it and how he thought about delivering it. So this is when he announced on the left side. This is him announcing the Kickstarter project in the video. And then this is a fan of his, who happens to be a friend of mine, who then shared it because she was in the video. And she said, hey, I want you to see this video I'm in. And this is the graphic he created so that as his project continued, he didn't like just keep typing words into a box and telling people about it. He had fun and exciting and very him ways of telling that story, things he knew his fans would respond to. Okay, so we've made the plan. We know how we're going to reach everyone. We want to make sure that they are engaged. People are, and you did it. You did a great job. You made content. They're there. They're excited. People are coming to your page. You want to make sure that when they land on your Kickstarter page, they have somewhere to go with that energy. And I can't tell you how many times this is where things go wrong for people. They've done an incredible job building an audience, getting people excited about their creative idea, and then you land on their Kickstarter page and the story kind of falls apart. Suddenly it turns from a creative art project or photo project into a fundraiser, and no one really likes a fundraiser. So one of the nice things about Kickstarter is you have rewards, and your rewards are a way to offer a copy of the thing, an exclusive opportunity, some sort of creative experience, a way for people to get inside and be a part of the thing that you're truly making. So your rewards are a way for you to convert those curious fans into backers, people who are now part of your project. Another little matrix for you. You can use all that research you did about your audience. You can use that same research here when figuring out what your rewards could be. So if you're going to make your album, let's say you're a musician and you're making an album, like in the case of Tim, who's also an artist, you might have the thing like the phony that he sort of was mysteriously writing about on the internet, which was a very limited edition artwork that he created in a glass residency that he did. It was for his fans, but also art collectors. He was introducing himself as an artist to the world, and he was able to price it at the $100 level because it was a limited edition artwork. So again, same thinking about who these people are, where you're going to reach them, what they care about, and then you can add in another layer, which is how much money do these people have when you're structuring your rewards. So parting tip before we go to Q&A. You've sort of done all this work. You've done a great job. People have, you've found them, you've brought them in, you've engaged them. They're part of your creative idea. You want to make sure you keep them engaged. We have something on Kickstarter called Project Updates. This is like a blog built into your project page. I can't tell you how many times, particularly in the art and photo category, where project updates stop coming once the project has been funded, right? Which is sad, because most people are there because they're excited about the creative thing you're making. So If you want these people to stick around and be your fans for life, if you don't want them just to be your project backers, but to be people who are excited about your creative practice overall, use those updates. Keep them engaged. Keep them up to date about your project. Tell them when it launches into the world, right? This is a tool you can use. Okay, thank you. Questions?
Hi, my name is Marcus. Do you recommend, as far as building an audience
Yes.
through social media, do you recommend, for example, somebody who wants to do a book, creating a Facebook page or a Twitter page for that book, or using your own personal Twitter, Facebook pages, or both? What do you recommend?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of up to you and the goal of your project. I would recommend that if you're an artist or a photographer, you probably want to build a fan base around you and your practice and your ongoing practice, because when that book is over, you want those people still a part of your story and your life and your energy. So I would say include them in your general feed. That is, of course, keeping in mind that your feed should be attuned for that kind of audience. If it's not, then I would say definitely create a separate stream. I've gone to conferences and heard people speak at length at this, and everyone has a different approach. I think that the very modern way is to just have one place, but it's really up to you and how you handle your social media lifestyle. Yes?
What would you say are the biggest aside from what makes a successful campaign, what would you say are the biggest pitfalls that you see repeated that kind of sabotage the campaign from really taking off?
Sure. What are the biggest pitfalls for a campaign really taking off? One is talking about fundraising, asking people for help and asking for money, rather than, as I sort of try to outline for you guys here, talking about your creative project, the thing that you're trying to achieve, the thing that people talk about in real life. Like if you think about what social media is for, it's for where people are social and where people share media. It is not a place where shouting and asking really gets like loved and like shared around. So number one is sidestepping your normal human way of talking about your creative work and suddenly becoming like a used car salesman. Two is those rewards that I was talking about. So if you might be excellent at talking about your project and getting people excited about what you're doing, but then when it comes to figuring out what are the right rewards for engaging people in a creative way, in a meaningful way, in a way that feels valuable, or like an exclusive opportunity that's just from you to them, is very important. So very common on Kickstarter, we'll see people do like $20 Facebook shout out. I don't know what that means. I still don't know what that means. Most probably because I've never pledged for it. I would never give 20 bucks to someone to do whatever that is. I would say rather than repeating the mistakes of other people, I would look at other people's creative projects and look at where they had successes. So $25 is the most common pledge on Kickstarter. So if you're a photographer or an artist, I would go to projects that are similar to yours, look and see where the most backers seem to congregate, where they're having the most success, and make notes of it also. Just say like, oh, that's a creative idea. Oh, that's a cool idea. I would back that. I would give that person $100. So, I mean, for those of you who were here earlier, Scout's $100 signed photo book was the most popular reward. That's a lot of money, but people were very excited about it. So it's figuring out what's right for you, but really offering something substantial and exciting in exchange. Those are the two biggies.
Is there any kind of style that you recommend for making a video that you see, like some videos just didn't really work very well, whereas others, the way that they were created and edited, were more powerful?
Yeah, so videos on Kickstarter are a really interesting thing. Again, it kind of depends on who you are. It's like I'm sorry that I keep defaulting to this, but this is sort of what I was hoping to do in this presentation, was figuring out who you are, your creative style, your creative voice, and then the people who are going to be most excited and already are excited about what you're up to. That's the video that's going to work for you. So if you you know, we've seen, I must have watched thousands of Kickstarter project videos at this point, and I've seen some that are like in crappy lighting, I can barely hear them, but they're so sweet and so charming and so personal that I'll struggle through the haze and through the audio to find the story, and then I'll give them money because I love them so much, right? That's a lot of charm in one person. What we mostly see is people being people. I think that's the most common effective strategy, is just to be a human, share what it is you're excited about, share examples of your work. So again, assuming that you're here because you're an artist or a photographer, it's showing your work, whatever that work might be, and getting people excited about that and bringing them in through that channel.
Hi, it's Marcus again. Speaking of videos, what about the length? Is there guidelines or maximum length or minimum?
Sure. Yeah. So for a long time, the typical length of a Kickstarter video is around 3 minutes. I think now it's much closer to 2 minutes. I think people have learned a lot over the years from watching these videos. You want to keep it short and snappy. It's kind of like, it's amazing what you can pack into 2 minutes. In fact, I recommend, if you haven't seen it, we have a montage of some of our favorite Kickstarter videos. I think it's 1 minute and 48 seconds long, and it's kind of mind-blowing to think about how many stories, how many faces, how many beautiful scenes that we can cram into that little tiny thing. So short is good. I always say short and shareable are the two things to keep in mind.
I had a question about the art and photography program that you guys are doing this month.
Yeah.
And is there any, do you have any special plans to popularize the projects, and do we need to do anything formal to get involved with that?
We're touting either Kickstarter.com and we're touting Kickstarter.com/art and /photography quite heavily on the site. And part of that page is explore live projects, and it features three projects right there, and then links you on to the Discover section. We are also doing project roundups over the course of the month, and in that case, I can tell you my colleague and I are working on it, and if you want to come up to me afterwards and tell me about your project, I'll take a look at it and see if we can fit it into one of the themes we're thinking about exploring, for sure.
My name is Bara, and I have 2 quick questions. They're related to each other. The first one is, of course, the story is very important for a project to catch the curiosity of the audience. And sadly, some projects have a good idea, but they were not able to tell the story very clearly with a good quality. So does Kickstarter as a platform help those people who want to start their campaigns to refer them to people who can probably make them tell the story even better? That's the first part. The second part is, how does a project get featured on the first page on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
It's like tips or tricks.
Yeah, sure. So first question is, not all people are brilliant storytellers. Does Kickstarter help tell stories or help you tell your story? No. We're a huge community now with thousands of projects live at any given time. It would just not be sustainable for us to do that. The good news is you don't need me or one of my coworkers helping you with this. I would recommend all of you, take your project to a friend, to a trusted colleague. We make it possible for you to share drafts of your project before you launch it, and people can leave little notes for you, or if you prefer, you can just have a phone call or a coffee or a drink, whatever you prefer. Invite them over for dinner, go over your project page with them. Before I worked at Kickstarter, I worked at a place called IB Martin Technology Center, and I think I probably did this for every single resident there, and it was always so fun because I would learn so much about what they were doing. So as a reviewer, it was something that I can tell you most people do enjoy. And then the second question was, how do you get featured like on the homepage of Kickstarter or elsewhere? Any tips? We love a wide diversity of projects. We're a strange and kooky group of people with all of us creative backgrounds ourselves. We, as much as we can, try to pay attention to and watch as many projects as we see every day. I mean, I can tell you my morning bus commute involves browsing recently launched projects. And we all have the power to staff pick things, leave notes if we think something's particularly great, and sort of push it onto our editorial team, which is amazing because that means that there could possibly be over 100 people who are looking at the site and trying to elevate things that we find interesting. And the diversity of our interests is good for that. You know, if you look at what we feature, you're going to be like, who are these people? But it's, I think, really quite fun. Yeah.
Yep. Hi, my name is Regu. I just want to ask, why should I use Kickstarter over other platforms like Indiegogo? Well, you got Rocket Hub, you have Pledge Music, and some of these platforms, they allow you to withdraw whatever's been donated, even though you don't meet the goals. That's part one of the question. And part two is you get a lot of people kind of putting in their own money to withdraw the money, even though they don't meet the goals. You know, so it's like, and you know, so like just asking that.
Yeah. So okay, this sounds like a two-part question to me. Where one part is why Kickstarter. The second part is one of our big differentiators is that we require all or nothing funding, which means that you can always raise more than your goal, but never less. Which means that sometimes people might game the system. So first, Kickstarter is an incredible global community of people dedicated to bringing creative projects to life. No community is as big as ours. We've had, for those of you here for the first part of the presentation, we've had people from all over the world, nearly every single country in all 7 continents, back a project on Kickstarter. Our repeat backer numbers, I think we're at 2.5 million people have pledged to more than one project. We're at like 250,000 who have pledged to 10 or more. This community, I can't say this enough, there's just no community like it. And part of that is because we are exclusively for creative projects. We are a place where people come to make films, to make art, to make photography, to make comics, make design. This is a place where people come to make, which means that everyday humans come to the site to browse and discover and learn about creativity and culture and ideas that are happening in the world around them. It means that the press browses the site, looks for stories to tell. It means that publishers look for new books to publish, right? It is a vital and creative ecosystem. The all or nothing funding model is part of the success of this site. So what we have seen, I know it's a scary thing, why can't I keep just part of my money? What we have seen is if it's going to cost you $5,000 to, I don't know, make that public artwork, whatever it is, and you only raise $1,000, it leaves you in a kind of awkward spot. Now you're holding $1,000 of people's money. You don't have $4,000 to do the rest of your project. You've made a lot of promises, i.e. rewards. You're going to make this thing by a certain time, by a certain date. And there's no clear sort of end in sight. So it builds trust in your community. It's better for you in the long term as a creative practitioner and being able to fulfill on those promises. And on the flip side, because there is that clock that is counting down, it means that you are very, very motivated to reach that goal. So as you pointed out, some people do find ways to push themselves over the top. The reason that I did this workshop tonight and the reason we talk about exactly this, how do you build and engage an audience around your idea, is so that you don't have to. No one wants to be in that position. No one wants to be like scrambling to try to figure out that money in the last minute. You want to come into this confident and sure and ready to go. You want to launch knowing that the goal you set is something that is achievable and fun and exciting and doable for you. So the all or nothing funding model, I promise you, if you put effort into it, it means you will reach your funding goal. What I talked to you guys tonight about means that if you put the right effort into it before, you will reach that goal and it will be joyous. Yes?
Can an artist on an artist visa launch a project?
Can an artist on an artist visa launch a project? Meaning like you don't have...
I'm not a citizen.
Yeah, so only people based in countries who are residents in countries where Kickstarter operates can launch a project on Kickstarter. So as of now, that's a handful of countries. We're growing all the time. What artists, maybe like yourself, will do is they'll find a fiscal sponsor or a collaborator or a partner to work with. An example of that is the Magnum Foundation here in New York supports a lot of photographers in their work and making projects, and one of the ways they support them is through being fiscal sponsors on their Kickstarter projects. They're very selective in how they do it. They only do one every 6 months. It's usually a previous grantee, but that's an example of the way that artists from other countries that we don't support have been able to use the site. Yes, and there's a microphone coming for you.
Just a quick question. I got triggered when you mentioned countries. Is there a plan to go on different languages, multi-languages. So sometimes a project that's focused on a certain geographical place. So you can have the main page in English, but for example, you can press a button where everything will be in Spanish or German or whatever you're targeting.
Yeah, I think there's a long-term plan for that. Right now, for most creators, that's just not something that they need. They might have 2 languages. Actually, the Magna Foundation, their most recent project had an English. They had their project in both English and in Spanish, and because they knew they had an audience in Mexico as well as in the UK and the US. So they just did like paragraph English, paragraph Spanish, and in the Spanish one, it was like, if you want the full thing in Spanish, click here, and it took you to sort of like the bottom of the page where it was like the whole thing. Obviously, that's not the most elegant solution, but again, it's really a minority of creators at this point that have that multi-language need, so at this point, that's how it's being handled, but it's for sure something we're thinking about. I will say there is a project called the Arcid Space Telescope. They were pretty confident, because it's a space project, that they would have a global audience, and they experimented with putting a Google Translate button into their project description. So if you want to see how that works, you can look it up and see how they handled it.
Hi, I was wondering about pop-up galleries, or I know Kickstarter had something at the MoMA Design Store, or events that Kickstarter puts together in support of artist projects, kind of like the Kickstarter Film Festival that I went to this past summer, and I know it was in other cities as well. So I was just wondering about things that were organized here to show off works.
What exactly are you wondering about with those?
Like pop-up shows or things like that.
Meaning like what? How,
That
like,
Kickstarter organizes.
How?
Does that happen? Is that something you do?
Yes. Well, you just listed a bunch of them, right?
Well, I mean for art.
Oh, yeah, for art. So Kickstarter, for sure, we're very interested in our creative community, and thinking about beyond the like 30-day funding window is something that we think a lot about. I would say it's another differentiator of us and some of the other websites out there. So our film festival is an example of how we've celebrated that. For those of you who are not sick of hanging out and talking to me and not terrified of the weather, we'll go into the gallery after this, where you'll see a photo exhibition that was organized by my coworkers. Sorry, I just like smoked some drugs. Organized by my coworkers, featuring the photographs of Rachel Sussman, which is incredible. And we've organized shows every month in the gallery since January as part of the category months we're doing. We'll continue to do that. And yeah, we're always looking for opportunities and ways to engage our community. The events, because they're events and local and only can touch a very limited audience, and our audience is global, are not where we place a ton of our efforts. But online stuff is for sure something that we love to do. The category months is a great example that's sort of spanned from the online celebration all the way to the very, very local that you guys are experiencing here tonight.
Hi, my name's Jen. Going off what you are talking about with the events and engaging the communities, I know it's all local, so that would mean the project should probably be local, but do you have an outlet of I guess that's someone who is putting on a project, someone to reach out or, try and collaborate, or is that an option, or is it just so rare it's probably just as it comes?
As of today, we're still, this is funny to say sometimes, but we are still a very young company. So right now, this is our only headquarters. Right now, this is the only place we have staff. When we have done events outside of New York, like we did our film festival in a few cities this year, we did it in LA and we did it in London. It was us, we did an open call for participation for the film. So it was a way for us to say, hey, we're coming, submit your ideas. But then we also looked at projects in the LA area and in the London area and said, what's really interesting happening here? We all travel a lot and try to keep, I can't think of the right word, a sense of what's going on in these cities, what the creative life is like in these cities, and know lots of great people in these cities. So like when I'm going to London to do an event, I'll call up all my favorite London people and be like, who's incredible that we should invite to be part of this thing? I'm doing something at X museum, to your point, who should be in the show. There's a lot of stuff that we don't directly host that we get invited to host quite often because of bandwidth, et cetera, et cetera. It's not something we participate in, but we'll send them lists of creators. So this happened in London quite recently, in fact, where we were like, we can't be there, sorry, but here's our 10 most favorite people that you should absolutely reach out to. And that's something we very actively do. It just happens pretty much behind the scenes. If you ever want to, also, you can email stories@kickstarter.com. It's sort of our open channel for soliciting, tell us what you're up to kind of ideas. If you don't remember that, if you're subscribed to our Happening newsletter, it's part of that sort of series. So you'll see. Send us your stories. Hi.
Yes, so this relates mostly to the audience. And the question is, what are the different kind of interactions between the audience and, let's say, the finished artwork? So I guess mostly is it done through the audience seeing everything through the computer, through the phone, all the art, or is there any other interaction besides that visual way of seeing the final work or the video or...
Yeah, so ideally, of course, you want your audience to be able to see your work in real life. Actually, Rachel Sussman was here installing her photos earlier this week, and I was just like, wow, I've seen these on the internet for so many years. It's incredible to see, particularly with photography, it's always great to see the real thing as the artist meant it to be seen and printed and just physical. I think every artist should hope for that and strive for that and create opportunities for that. I think it's sort of what I was getting to at the end of the presentation with thinking about sustained engagement. And this is using your project updates, using all those other channels, whatever it is for you, whether it's email or social media, to invite people in and to see your project. So that might mean people who just live in the area, be like, hey guys, open studio this week. It's been so great doing this project with you. Please come by my studio, check out what I've been working on, or gallery show, et cetera, et cetera. But you can also say, I mean, there's a guy who did a project who's based in Tokyo, and he said to his backers, whenever you're in Tokyo, you are a guest in my house, knock on my door. And I got an update from him a few weeks ago where it was like, me and my backers who visited me while they were visiting Tokyo from San Francisco last week. So I think it's on you to do it, but you should definitely use those communication channels to invite people in to see your work, because those are the meaningful moments of engagement. Those are the meaningful ways you're going to connect with people through your practice and through conversation, and just it's a more long-term, sustained, more meaningful version of engagement. Kickstarter obviously is a website, so that's how we give you to communicate. Is that it? That's it. All right, yay!